Welcome back, and we are in the United Kingdom, where South African President Cyril Ramaphosa visited the Royal Botanic Gardens with Britain's Prince Edward today, his second day of a state visit to the UK. Mr. Ramaphosa and Prince Edward toured the gardens in Kew, London, and listened to talks about plants. The visit comes as Britain and South Africa announced a new health and science partnership covering vaccine manufacturing, genome sequencing, climate change, and other areas. Meanwhile, King Charles hosted a banquet in honor of visiting South African president last night. The monarch, 74, rolled out the traditional ceremony as Britain sought to bolster its relations with its biggest trading partner in Africa.
Particularly important for plants like aloes that are traded.
It is only by working together across our countries and our generations that we will tackle some of the greatest challenges of our times. For instance, our collaboration in science and innovation is literally vital in order to protect our people's health by preparing for future pandemics. Perhaps, above all, we must find and implement practical solutions to the twin existential threats of climate change and biodiversity loss.
In times of uncertainty and instability, a relationship such as ours is particularly important. We are urged and, in a way, compelled by our common commitment to peace, stability, democracy, and shared prosperity to work together to overcome the difficulties of the present and prepare ourselves for the challenges of the future.
Joining us now is our correspondent in London, Teniola Oyetayo. Hi, Teniola. Talk to us more about Tuesday's banquet. We're sure a lot more things would have gone down there with the South African president at the Buckingham Palace.
Hi, Millicent. It's good to see you. Yes. Royal glamour was on full display at the royal banquet, with the Queen Consort and the Princess of Wales wearing lavish gowns and sparkling crowns. Well, it was really nice to see, with it being the first banquet for the King as monarch and following a period of mourning Queen Elizabeth. Well, apart from that, the highlight were the speeches from King Charles and President Ramaphosa, like we just heard. They both spoke about the loving relationship between the late Queen Elizabeth and former South African President Nelson Mandela, and also touching strongly about the relationship between the UK and South Africa, and just really a call to boost that relationship and to work further on various issues like climate change and also education.
We know the Queen and Nelson Mandela former South African president, had a cordial relationship, and, that was also highlighted at the dinner. Perhaps, could we see such relationship between, King Charles and South African president?
Yeah, I think from what we've seen so far, I think we're starting to see maybe the beginning of that relationship in some way. If we look at the pictures that we saw yesterday between the King and President Ramaphosa, it was a very playful, friendly display of affection, really. So I think we're starting to see the beginning of that relationship in some way. And I think this is all just part of the King's aim to reinforce the role of the Commonwealth and also really the relationship with South Africa. So I definitely think we could see a strong relationship like that between the King and President Ramaphosa.
We understand other activities occurred today, the visit to the Botanical Gardens, and also, he did address Parliament, which we will play very shortly, where I think he acknowledged the difficult legacy of colonialism. What more are we learning of his second visit today?
Well, the second day of his visit is really focused on meeting with the Prime Minister. Just a few moments ago, he did meet with Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, and they held talks focused on trade and investment. We also know the visit to the Botanical Gardens. That's following the deal in which the UK and South Africa have announced on a new health and science partnership covering vaccine manufacturing, genome sequencing, and climate change and other areas. So we do know that today is the final day of President Ramaphosa's visit. And shortly after that meeting with Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, we know that he's going to pay a visit to the King, which will wrap up his visit, his state visit to the United Kingdom.
Tanya, thanks for that update. Our London correspondent there, Teniola Uyitayo. And let's take you to the moment the South African president addressed the UK Parliament. Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa called on the British government to support South Africa in its response to climate change. He said developed nations like the United Kingdom should take responsibility for their role in the current crisis and assist countries that cannot afford to pay for the cost of addressing climate change.
Nowhere is the need to tackle inequality more important than in our response to climate change. Those countries that carry the least responsibility for global warming are the most vulnerable to its effect. They do not have the resources needed to adapt to drought, floods, and rising sea levels. And as they seek to grow, as they seek to industrialize and to diversify their economies, their energy needs will increase and the space they have to reduce emissions will keep on narrowing. This places a responsibility on the more industrialized nations of the world to contribute substantial resources to low and medium income countries to fund their climate actions. And this should not be seen as charity. It is compensation for the harm done and the harm yet to be done to people in developing economies as a consequence of the industrialization that wealthy countries have had over many years. And because a global reduction in emissions benefits all countries and all people, it is also necessary that investment should be made for the future of humanity, as it will benefit all.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa. We have a story on South Africa, but staying in the United Kingdom, the top court ruled today that the Scottish government cannot hold a second referendum on independence next year without approval from the British Parliament, dealing a hammer to hopes of holding a vote next year. In 2014, Scots rejected ending the more than 300-year-old union with England by 55% to 45%, but independence campaigners have argued the vote 2 years later for Britain to leave the European Union, which the majority of Scottish voters opposed, has materially changed the circumstances.
For all these reasons, which are set out more fully in the judgment, the Court unanimously concludes that the proposed bill does relate to reserved matters. Accordingly, in the absence of any modification of the definition of reserved matters by an order in Council under Section 30 of the Scotland Act or otherwise, the Scottish Parliament does not have the power to legislate for a referendum on Scottish independence.
Well, Nicola Sturgeon, that is Scottish First Minister, says she is disappointed, but she will respect the court's decision. Let's go to South Africa now, where public servants declared Tuesday a national day of action and embarked on a nationwide march in 8 provinces, demanding a double-digit wage increase. This follows a deadlock in wage negotiations between trade unions and government. The government's decision to unilaterally implement a 3% baseline increase prompted the Public Servants Association to hold a one-day public service strike last Thursday, demanding a better wage offer and ending job cuts in the public service. Our South African correspondent, Brian Fugeni, has more.
Several South African trade unions representing public workers have embarked on a national shutdown strike in protest of a wage increase demanding about 10%, while government continues to offer a 3% increase. Here in Pretoria, workers marched through the streets to the office of the National Treasury.
When they went to Parliament, when they were presenting a budget, workers were the PSCP said the conciliation. We are not represented in Parliament, but they announced our bargaining rights there. They announced our wages there. They end up saying to the public, actually, Ribazami.
We are saying that this 3%, it is not applicable, especially with the rise cost of living. We are saying that 10% is the way to go. And then we are saying that we are appealing to the government to come back to the collective bargaining table so that we can be able to engage in a proper way. Failure to which, today it is just the beginning. If they don't want to take us seriously, we will go back, mobilize even those that are not in this platform, so that when we take it to the street, the impact will be felt.
Minister of Labour Thulas Nesi received a hostile welcome from workers who showed their anger at the decision taken by government to stick with their 3% wage increase. The protesting workers refused to hear what the minister had to say.
Do you want to hear the minister responding, or you don't want to hear?
The minister received the memorandum, but the protesters had their way as the minister did not talk and left.
We want to protect the rights of workers side by side with them, not sending them to go and fight only and we join them on the point of victory, but we want to be with them from now throughout until their victories are won. And we guarantee the workers that as long as they are united, they will win. There's no government that can fight against workers. These are the creators of wealth in society.
We hope today they will listen, because thousands marched here on the 10th and thousands are coming here today. Obviously, the president, Cyril Ramaphosa, who is a former trade unionist, will listen to the plight of workers and come to the party to engage us as union leaders so that we find amicable solution to this problem.
After handing over their memorandum of demands, the unions say if these demands are not met in 7 days, they will again take to the streets, and there is a possibility of an indefinite strike to finally get what is owed to workers. From Pretoria, South Africa, Brian Fugeni, Channels Television News.
Well, staying in Africa, Ghana's President Nana Akufo-Addo has warned that terrorist groups represent a southward drift of the menace from the Sahel to coastal West Africa as they seek new operation grounds. West African leaders and European ministers are in Ghana's capital, Accra, to discuss regional solutions to the insurgency that is spreading as foreign troops pull out of Mali, where militants have seized vast swaths of territory.
Ministers of Foreign Affairs, Defense and Bienvenue.
We continue to watch in angst how the activities of terrorist and extremist groups have resulted in the unfortunate disregard for the national sovereignty and territorial integrity of our states, the painful deterioration of the strength of our democracies, the wanton displacement of masses of our populations, and the needless loss of considerable numbers of lives. Today, the terrorist groups, emboldened by their apparent success in the region, are seeking new operational grounds, a development that has triggered a southward drift of the menace from the Sahel to coastal West Africa.
The terrorist objectives are well known to us to threaten the very existence of your societies and countries. And this situation calls for rapid mobilizations from regional partners and from the entire international community, because your fight against terrorism is our fight too.
Welcome back. We're staying in Africa, and this is Nigeria's story coming from Nigeria, where this is the first time in 19 years that the country will be redesigning its currency notes. President Muhammadu Buhari unveiled the redesigned Naira note at the Federal Executive Council meeting in Abuja. The Naira notes launched by the president are the 1,000 notes, 500 and the 200 Naira notes. During the ceremony held before the Federal Executive Council meeting, the president stated the importance of redesigning the new Naira note, explaining that it will aid the country address the issue of illicit financial flows, corruption, improve the economy, as well as advance the value of the Nigerian currency. The president also appealed to Nigerians to embrace the policy to redesign the Naira.
There was an urgent need to take control of currency in circulation and to address the hoarding of Naira banknotes outside the banking system, the shortage of clean and fit banknotes in circulation, and the increase in counterfeiting of high-denomination Naira banknotes. It is on this basis that I gave my approval for the redesign of the 200 Naira, 500 Naira, and 1,000 Naira banknotes. While this may not be apparent to many Nigerians, only 4 out of the 54 African countries printed their currencies in their countries, and Nigeria is one. Hence, a majority of African countries print their currencies abroad and import them the way we import other goods. That is why it is with immense pride that I announce to you that these redesigned currencies are locally produced right here in Nigeria by our Security Printing and Minting PLC. The new Naira banknotes have been fortified with security features that made it difficult to counterfeit. These new banknotes will help the central bank design and implement better monetary policy objectives. I am delighted now to officially launch the 200 Naira, 500 Naira, and 1,000 Naira banknotes.
Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari. To Asia now, where shops and schools were closed in China while restaurants and cafes had halted dine-in services in parts of Beijing as COVID-19 cases continue to rise rapidly. Across the country, cities including the capital Beijing, financial hub Shanghai, have all closed malls and parks and imposed limits on the movement of people arriving from elsewhere as infections near record highs last seen in April. And a Walmart employee killed 6 people, wounded several others before fatally shooting himself at a store in Chesapeake, Virginia, Tuesday night, just days after a gunman killed 5 and injured 17 at a Colorado nightclub. Chesapeake Police Chief Mark Solsky said in a news conference today that the shooter died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. 6 other people were confirmed dead. 4 were being treated at area hospitals. The chief said the shooter used a pistol and was an employee of Walmart where the shooting took place.
As far as the investigation, I mean, it's an all-hands-on-deck type situation at this point. You know, we have many of our investigators here, and we just, piece by piece, we just take a little bit of time. We have plenty of time right now. The store's closed, so we're going to investigate until we get everything complete.
Our Washington correspondent Maria Bird joins me now. Maria, another day, yet another shooting. What more can you tell us about this? I mean, why did an employee do such a thing?
In this year in the U.S. And so it is a time, I think, that Americans are reckoning with what is going to happen next. Most importantly, calling on the congressional members to enact laws that will prevent, if possible, at least deter these type of violent crimes and acts. We are right here on the eve of the Thanksgiving holiday, and many people are beginning to shop, and obviously the stores were filled. And I think a store manager would go into the break room and begin to release fire. And he's been working at the Walmart since 2010. So he's a pretty long-time employee of the store, worked the night, was a night shift lead in that, and a community that I think is going to be shaken for quite some time.
So in terms of the motive, that is not known. How else are officials handling this, seeing as it's coming just days after the gunman opened fire in Colorado?
This is coming, as you said, just days after. They're taking, it happened a little less than an hour before stores were getting ready to close. And so they spent the entire evening walking step by step through the process of what could have occurred. There will be all types of forensics and just additional investigations that will occur to ensure that they really understand exactly how this could have happened. They have not been able yet to get in contact with the next of kin of the gunman. So I think they're going to obviously be communicating with those who are close to him just to see, obviously checking his social media, going through his belongings, his personal items, just to see what could have been the reason and the motives behind this. There'll be a ton of interviews, obviously, of those who worked under him and those who were at the store that evening to see if there was anything that would have led to them having any idea that he could have been of the mindset to have this type of a mass shooting.
And perhaps finally, Maria, I mean, what are the gun laws like in Virginia? Perhaps this also could help stop another shooting of this kind.
Well, Virginia is a right to bear arms state. And Virginia does have some, I don't want to say looser, but not as restrictive gun laws as other parts of the country. I know we've talked about before, in Times Square, there is no gun allowed, no unconcealed or concealed weapon allowed in the Times Square area in New York, a very highly condensed community. Virginia, there's a lot of hunting of deers, and so they do have a little bit less extensive gun laws to prevent or to limit the availability of being able to purchase guns. And so there will be obviously additional conversations internally within the state of Virginia, especially the state Senate, how this might impact it. But the real question is, the right to bear arms is one of the greatest constitutional amendments that many stand on, versus what we're seeing as guns being used in an improper way and is causing the death and life of many Americans. And so this is going to have to be handled federally. And we're going to probably begin to see, as soon as we have Senate comes back and Congress comes back in session, very harsh, potentially conversations, but act toward stricter gun laws.
Conversations that need to be had. Thank you so much, our Washington correspondent Maria Bird, live for us.
Thank you.
Let's go over to Colombia. Negotiators from the government and leftist guerrilla group, the National Liberation Army, have begun peace talks, the first major step in President Gustavo Petro's efforts to end nearly 60 years of war. Mr. Petro, a former member of the M19 insurgency who took office in August, has promised to bring total peace to Colombia by negotiating with rebels and crime gangs involved in drug trafficking and illegal mining. The talks, which began in Venezuelan capital Caracas, will rotate among guarantor countries, Venezuela, Cuba, and Norway. That's according to the Colombian government. On the program, we're back in the US, where turkey prices have taken off since last year, leaving American families paying more this Thanksgiving holiday. Turkey farmers say they are also feeling the impact of ongoing inflation. Kaufman says costs to feed and process his turkeys have soared, forcing him to make some difficult decisions. According to a recent survey from the American Farm Bureau, the price of an average Thanksgiving dinner for 10 people has risen 20% since last year. The same survey reveals the price of a 16-pound turkey has increased by 21% compared to 2021, putting the Thanksgiving bird at its highest price ever in history of the 37-year-old survey.
Everything is more expensive. You have inflation, the price just goes up, and you got to pay it. So then we got to charge more, and hopefully our customers will pay more too.
Well, regardless, there must be a lot to be thankful for. That's our program this evening. Thank you for watching. I'm Lisa.